Yeah, good day. There's nothing as gratifying as just only knowing that you're talking to men. Men who indeed have given their trust to God Almighty. Men who trust this God even for their own families. Today I just only want to inspire you by reading from the Word of God, and I'm reading from the book of Prophet Jeremiah, chapter 29, and I desire to read from verses 1 through 11, time permitting. This passage then reads as follows. Now these are the words of the letter that Jeremiah the prophet sent from Jerusalem unto the residue of the elders which were carried away captives, and to the priests, and to the prophets, and to all the people whom Nebuchadnezzar had carried away captive from Jerusalem to Babylon. The first verse is actually giving a narrative of the manner in which this message was packaged. It was actually in the form of a letter. God inspired Jeremiah to write a letter to the elders, to the prophets, to the very remnant, to those who were taken captive into Babylon by Nebuchadnezzar. And verse 2 says, after that Jeconiah the king, and the queen, and the eunuchs, and the princes of Judah and Jerusalem, and the carpenters, and the smiths were departed from Jerusalem. I want you to recognize this, the people who matter the most, the goldsmiths, the blacksmiths, people who could actually manufacture the weapons for defense purposes. These people were the ones who were deliberately taken away captive by King Nebuchadnezzar. When you take such people, the opinion makers, people who could drive the economy of the country, and you taking them away, indeed, even without saying it verbally, but you are actually effectively so killing the economy of this country. And now we are told Nebuchadnezzar took these people from Jerusalem to Babylon because he wanted to cripple their economy. And verse 3 says, by the hand of Elasah, the son of Shaphan, and Gemariah, the son of Hilkiah, whom Zedekiah king of Judah sent unto Babylon, to Nebuchadnezzar king of Babylon, saying, thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, unto all that are carried away captives, whom I have caused to be carried away from Jerusalem unto Babylon. God is saying, I know that there are people who matter the most, people who were the engine, people who were driving the economy of the land of Israel. And these people, I know that they are in Babylon. And let me not even try and say it in my own words. Let me read it, from, the Bible itself. And I'm reading verse 4. The last phrase of, verse 4, where it says, whom I have caused to be carried away from Jerusalem unto Babylon. At times when we have our Babylon experience, we think that God has no part. God did not play any role in causing us to be taken captive in Babylon. But here it is, God is saying unto Jeremiah, you write them a letter to inform them that I know about their circumstances. They should not go there thinking that I don't know. In fact, I have caused it to so happen that they be taken into Babylon as captives. And verse 5 says, build ye houses. He says, I know that you are actually in prison. I know that you have actually been taken there as slaves. But I'm saying to you, I want you to relax. You can pray me, you know how. But I'm not actually, going to let you go from Babylon. You are fulfilling my purpose by being in Babylon. And he says, build ye houses. And I'm not too sure if as men, in our country today, if we could be experiencing our Babylon moment, will we be able to say, God has a hand? This is part of the grand plan. Maybe we need actually to remind ourselves that it was part of the grand plan that Judas be amongst the other 11 disciples of Christ. It was so designed that there be someone. It did not take God by surprise. That's why Jesus could actually come and say, what you do quickly. Because he knew that Judas was going to betray him. And he said, hey, don't vacillate between, two opinions, whether to do it or not to do it. What you do quickly. Could that be indeed our own reaction to our own circumstances? That, let us seek to find God in our circumstances. Let us seek to hear God in our, circumstances. And he says, build your houses. You're not going anywhere. Approach the municipality. Get, the plans. Dig the foundations. Fill them up. Start to build. Buy the material. This, the whole process of building a house, I want us to understand that God was actually saying, you are here to stay. And I have caused it to so happen. And dwell in them. Don't build these houses as if you're building them for any other person. Build yourselves houses and dwell in them. Stay in them. Live in them. And plant gardens. Hey, seek the seeds. Prepare the soil. Fertilize the soil. Put in the seeds. Water them. These things, even as they show us how God was determined to prepare them. God here is preparing their minds to stay. Because when you go in there with the hope that maybe tomorrow we will be out of our prison. Maybe tomorrow we will actually be out of our Babylon. And God is saying, build the houses and dwell in them. And he says, plant the gardens and eat, the fruit of them. Take a seed of a tree, an apple tree, a peach tree, an apricot tree. You name them, and he says, you put the seeds in the soil. Water them. See this, the seeds germinate. See them become, trees that you can actually eat their fruit. He says, you're going to have to be prepared to wait that long. And verse 6 says, and ye wives. It says, take ye wives, and beget sons and daughters. Oh, he says, be ready, relax. Let life to continue. Live your lives. Don't stop living because you are in Babylon. He says, continue to live. Marry if you need actually to be married. He says, beget daughters, beget sons. And give your daughters to husbands. And that they may bear sons and daughters as well, that ye may be increased there. He says, in there, you're going actually to get married. You'll find wives in there. And you are actually going to allow your daughters or sons and daughters to grow up and also to be married and to have children as well. And you will indeed increase in number in Babylon. And not diminished. Verse 7, and seek the peace of the city whither I have caused you to be carried away captives. He said, you're going actually to pray for that city. You're going to pray for that land. The question is, are we still continuing to pray, for those who are governing us? If we think maybe they're taking wrong decisions, if we are so inclined or that way inclined, the question is, have we indeed sought God's face concerning the matter? Or There are too many voices such that we are confused which, voice now to begin to hear. But he says here in verse 8. No, verse 7. And seek the peace of the city whither I have caused you to be carried away. And even God here again repeats it again, that the peace of the city whither I have caused you to be carried away captives. Nebuchadnezzar is going to be used of God to fulfill a mission, a divine mission that God has with his own son, Israel. So whatever the hardships that they are going indeed to have to go through, it's a divine plan. And then it says, for in the peace thereof shall ye have peace. Want to have peace in South Africa? Want to have peace in the municipality of the local government where you are situated? You're going to have to pray for the peace of your town, the peace of your country, the peace of your city. For it is only in the peace of Babylon that you will then have your own peace. And verse 8 says, for thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, let not your prophets and your diviners that be in the midst of you deceive you, neither hearken to their dreams which ye cause to be dreamed. He says, many prophetic voices or many voices parading as the prophetic voices will come up. But he says, hearken not unto those voices. There are too many, prophetic voices. And you still wonder if they're still wearing or hearing the same God. Because a prophet inquires from the mouth of God. But it would appear like as if we are now hearing too many divergent, conflicting voices. And God says, when I have taken you to Babylon, too many of them will actually come and parade as though they are speaking on my behalf. Some of them are diviners. They are just only false prophets. They are not prophesying my own will. They are actually daydreaming, and they are actually prophesying their own wish. It says in verse 9, for they prophesy falsely unto you in my name. I have not sent them, saith the Lord. For thus saith the Lord, that after 70 years be accomplished at Babylon, I will visit you. God says, you build houses, you dwell in them, you plant gardens, you eat their fruit, and you make sure that you get married, and you beget sons and daughters, and you allow your sons and daughters also to engage themselves in marriages, and also to beget, sons and daughters as well. Maybe your own grandchildren, and maybe your own great-grandchildren. But he says you're not going anywhere anytime soon from Babylon. You are here, really to stay. And he says, for thus saith the Lord, that after 70 years be accomplished at Babylon, I will visit you. He says, you're not going anywhere. You're going to stay here until 70 years. You're going actually to stay here until you have learned to rest, until you have learned to be peaceable, until you have learned to be calm, until you have learned not to murmur, until you have learned not to be a gainsaying kind of a group. How about if we can be such men who can come and listen to their leaders? And once a voice has been declared, now we know that we will actually do according to what the king has said, because we honor the king. We need to have the kind of breed in our country, the kind of breed that will learn to honor those who are in offices of authority. And then listen to the most popular, verse that we like, after now that we know that it's going to be 70 years. Prophets can come and lie unto us. They can come and say whatever. God has got his own plan. And some of the plans of God, they make us to go through rugged, paths. They make us to go through wildernesses. They make us to go through deserts. But indeed, they are the plan of God. Some of them, they will require us to take up our crosses and to follow him. Maybe this verse or maybe this passage was not actually, intended for us. Romans chapter 8 and maybe let me read from verse 35. Verse 35 says, who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Shall tribulation? Tribulation. Lockdown is not a tribulation. Maybe it is a psychological trauma, but it has never caused blood to come out of us. And Paul is saying, nothing can separate us from the love of God. Because he said, and I want you to see this from the version that I'm using. Here, these things are personalized. The figure of speech used here, it is personification. It says, who shall? Because this will come upon us caused by another. So that person who causes these things, that person takes the nature of the thing itself. That's why, it is actually said here, who shall separate us? Shall tribulation, the person called tribulation, is it going actually to cause us to separate from the love of Christ? Or distress? Yes, people are very much distressed because they are now in a lockdown. They are not used to be confined. Or persecution, or famine. Some people are saying we will not obey. If you know the hunger that is actually in our own houses, can that separate you from so great the love of Christ? Or nakedness, lack of clothing, or peril or sweat. Verse 36 says, as it is written, for thy sake we are killed all day long. We are accounted as sheep for the slaughter. Nay, in all these things we are more than conquerors through him that loved us. These things, if we are focused enough, they shall not separate us from the love of God. But in all these, we shall come out as more than conquerors. And indeed, we will see verse 11. Because half the time, even when we make reference to verse 11 of Jeremiah 29, we discount what has actually been said. That we're going actually to have to stay in our Babylon 70 years. And God wants us to relax. When you wake up from your Babylon of lockdown, you're taking a bath, you're taking a shower, you dress up like as if you're going somewhere because you are content with your circumstances. Don't allow anything to depress you. You are a son of God with better promises, and you must actually act the part, look the part. And it is only when we are that, mindful of our reality with God, that indeed God will say to us, for I know the thoughts that I think towards you. By taking us into Babylon is not a sign of hatred, but it is out of love that he says, you stay there. I'm locking you down in Babylon. I know you're not actually going to be comfortable, but even when you are there, pray for the peace of Babylon. It says, for I know the thoughts that I think towards you, said the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil. You might be going through what you can interpret as evil, but I know the thoughts that I have for you. They are not thoughts of evil, to give you an expected end. Remember the expected end. The greatest promise ever, the promise of the adoption as sons of God. That is the greatest. When we are in our Babylon moment, let us not lose sight of the fact that indeed the thoughts that he has for us are the thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give us an expected end. My daughter, God bless you. Amen.